I still remember the night I realized my marriage wasn't what I thought it was. It wasn't a scream, or a fight, or even a confession. It was silence. The kind of silence that crawls under your skin and whispers, "Something's wrong." My name is Emma, and this is the story of how I found out my husband was cheating on me with my best friend. For 12 years, I thought I had the perfect life. A stable job, a cozy home in the suburbs, and Daniel, my husband, my rock, my safe place. We weren't perfect, but who is? We laughed, we fought, we made up. And then there was Claire, my best friend since college. We went through everything together: breakups, bad jobs, even that phase when we swore we'd move to Paris and live as artists. She was like a sister to me. Daniel adored her too. He said she was the funniest person he'd ever met. I used to joke that if he ever left me, it'd be for her. Funny how jokes age into prophecies. It started small. Daniel began spending more time, working late. I didn't think much of it at first. We were both busy, both tired. But then there were the little things. His phone suddenly had a password. He started wearing cologne again. He bought new shirts, ones I hadn't picked out. And whenever I asked about his day, he'd get defensive, as if I was accusing him of something. "You're being paranoid, Em," he'd say, his voice soft but sharp enough to cut. "You know how much pressure I'm under right now." I wanted to believe him. God, I needed to believe him. Because the alternative, that the man I built my life with was lying to me, was too painful to even consider. But it wasn't just Daniel who started acting strange. Claire did too. She stopped dropping by unannounced, stopped sharing the little details of her life. When we did talk, she seemed distracted. Her phone would buzz, and she'd smile in that way people do when they're talking to someone they care about. She'd say it was a work thing. I never pushed. I trusted her. One Friday, Daniel told me he had a team dinner. I offered to come along. He said it was just for employees. So I stayed home, opened a bottle of wine, and scrolled through Instagram. That's when I saw it.
Claire's story.
A cozy restaurant downtown.
Candlelight.
2 wine glasses. A man's arm reaching across the table. The sleeve of a shirt I'd ironed that morning. My heart dropped. I must have stared at that picture for a full minute before realizing I'd stopped breathing. I told myself it couldn't be him. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe I was losing it. But deep down, I knew. I knew. The next morning, Daniel came home early. He smelled like whiskey and guilt. He kissed my forehead like nothing had happened. I wanted to scream, to ask where he'd been, to demand the truth. But I didn't. I smiled. I made him breakfast. Because if he was lying, I wanted to catch him properly. I started paying attention to his receipts, his calendar, even the tone of his texts. He had one contact saved under Mark Work. I checked his phone while he showered. There were messages, sure, but they were vague, coded. "Can't wait to see you again. Same place tomorrow?" It could have been anyone. But one message changed everything. It was a selfie, just his hand holding a glass of wine. And in the reflection of that glass, blurry but unmistakable, was Claire's bracelet. The one I gave her for her birthday. My stomach turned cold. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every laugh they'd shared, every time she'd called him buddy, with that teasing smile. It had all been right there, in front of me. I just refused to see it. I decided I needed proof. Real proof. I downloaded a tracking app onto his phone while he was in the shower, pretending I needed to borrow it for a recipe. 2 nights later, when he said he was staying late at the office, the app showed him parked on a quiet street downtown, near Claire's apartment. I drove there, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear myself think. I parked a block away and waited. 10 minutes later, I saw them. Daniel stepping out of his car, looking around nervously. Claire opening her door, pulling him inside before anyone could see. I felt my entire world tilt. My hands shook so badly, I dropped my phone. I didn't cry, not yet. The tears would come later, like a flood. That night, I just sat there in the dark, staring at the apartment where my best friend and my husband were betraying me. The next morning, I acted like nothing was wrong. I kissed him goodbye, smiled when he said he'd make it up to me this weekend. But I was already planning my move. I wasn't going to scream or beg. I wanted him to see exactly what he'd thrown away. So I invited Claire over for brunch that Sunday. She hesitated, of course, but I told her I missed her and wanted to catch up. She came. She always came. When she walked in, she looked nervous. Her eyes darted around the house like it was a crime scene, which, in a way, it was. Daniel was supposed to be out, but I texted him at the last minute. Can you come home? I need you. He showed up 20 minutes later, looking confused. The moment he saw her, his face went pale. Claire froze, too.
And me?
I just smiled. Look who decided to join us, I said, pouring mimosas like we were in some twisted brunch club. I let them sweat. I talked about meaningless things, work, neighbors, the weather, while watching them squirm. Then I leaned back and said, You know, it's funny. I found something interesting on your phone, Daniel. A picture, actually. You remember it, don't you, Claire? The one from that fancy restaurant. Their faces said it all. Claire's lip trembled. Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came out. How long? I asked, voice trembling but steady enough to hurt. Silence.
How?
Long. Daniel looked down. 6 months, he whispered. 6 months. 6 months of lies, of dinners, of whispered conversations while I slept beside him. I laughed, an ugly, broken laugh. Claire started crying. It wasn't supposed to happen, she said. We didn't mean to fall in love. Fall in love? I repeated, almost amused. That's what we're calling it now. I stood up, grabbed the gift I'd prepared, and handed it to Daniel. Happy anniversary, I said. Inside was a folder, divorce papers already signed by me. His hands shook as he opened it. You planned this, he said quietly. No, I replied. You did. But that wasn't the end. Because a week later, Claire showed up at my door again, looking destroyed. She told me Daniel had broken up with her, that he'd confessed she was just a distraction, that he was trying to win me back. She cried on my doorstep, begging for forgiveness. I didn't let her in. I just said, Now you know how it feels. And then I closed the door. But here's where it gets twisted. 2 months later, I found out Daniel was seeing someone new. Someone from my office. And she had no idea about any of this. So I had a choice to make. Warn her, or let her find out the hard way. What would you do if you were me? I didn't say anything to anyone for weeks after that.
I just went silent.
You'd think after finding out about your husband cheating with your best friend, you'd scream, throw things, burn his clothes, something dramatic. But silence is worse. It eats you slowly. I went to work, smiled at people, laughed at jokes that didn't land, and then came home to a house that still smelled like him. The scent of his cologne on our sheets made my stomach turn. Every corner of that house felt like a ghost of our life. The coffee mugs he loved, the blanket we bought together, even the stupid dent in the couch from where he used to sit watching football, it all mocked me. Then one morning, while getting ready for work, I saw her. The new woman. Her name was Lily. She had just joined the company 3 months ago. Young, bright-eyed, ambitious. I'd mentored her a little, actually. Helped her settle in. She'd always seemed so sweet, so eager to impress. She mentioned she was seeing someone new recently, a guy who made her feel seen, again after a messy breakup. I remember smiling and saying, I'm happy for you. But that day, as she walked into the office wearing his hoodie, the one I bought for Daniel last Christmas, I felt my heart stop. It couldn't be. It shouldn't be. But the logo, the faded color, the way the sleeves were too long, it was his. I try to tell myself it was a coincidence. There must be thousands of gray hoodies like that. But then she said his name, Daniel. She said it so casually, like it was nothing. My boyfriend, Daniel. He said he might come by later to take me to lunch. My fingers went cold around my coffee cup. I didn't let it show, though. I just nodded, smiled, and said, Oh, that's nice. Inside, I was screaming. The rest of the day was a blur. I couldn't focus. My mind kept replaying everything. Every word he'd said when we fought. Every apology that meant nothing. And now he was with someone else, someone innocent, someone who had no idea what he was capable of. That night, I went home and opened my laptop. I found his social media, which he had conveniently reactivated. And there it was, a new profile picture, Daniel and Lily, smiling like a picture-perfect couple. My stomach twisted. I zoomed in on her face. She looked so happy, so in love.
Just like I used to.
For days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Should I warn her? Should I tell her that the man she was falling for had cheated on his wife with her boss's best friend? I wanted to protect her. But part of me, an ugly, bitter part, wanted her to suffer like I did. Then, fate intervened. One afternoon, Lily came to my office. She looked nervous, fidgety. She closed the door behind her and said, "Emma, can I ask you something? It's kind of personal." I told her to sit. She hesitated, then said, "You used to be married, right?" My throat tightened. "Yes." "Was your husband's name Daniel?" I froze. I didn't know whether to lie or to tell her everything. "Yes," I said quietly. She exhaled sharply, as if confirming something she'd suspected. "I thought so." I found her name at his phone. I asked him, and he said you were an old friend. But something didn't add up. He avoids talking about you. And last night, when I was at his place, I found a box of photos. Of you two. Wedding photos. She looked like she might cry. "Why would he still have those if you're divorced?" I didn't know what to say. I watched her. This young woman who had no idea she'd walked straight into the same trap I once did. I sighed and said, "Because he's never really done with anyone. He keeps pieces of us. Souvenirs." Lily covered her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. "So, he did cheat on you?" "Yes," I said simply. "With my best friend." She sat in silence for a long time. Then she whispered, "I thought he was different with me." I wanted to reach out, to comfort her. But I also wanted her to understand. "They always say that," I said. "Until they're not." She left my office quietly. I didn't see her for a few days after that, and I thought maybe she'd gone back to him, like so many do. But a week later, something strange happened. Daniel showed up at my door. He looked desperate. His hair was messy, eyes red. "Emma, please, can we talk?" I wanted to slam the door in his face, but curiosity won. "2 minutes," I said. He stepped inside, pacing like a man on trial. "Lily broke up with me."
She said she talked to you.
"What did you tell her?" "The truth," I said calmly. He groaned, running his hands through his hair. "You just can't let me move on, can you?" That made me laugh, loudly, bitterly. "You move on? Daniel, you moved on before our bed was even cold." He glared at me. "You think you're better than me? You pretended to be perfect, but you pushed me away. You made me feel invisible." I stared at him. "So you cheated because I made you feel invisible? That's your excuse?" He didn't answer, just looked at me like he was trying to find the version of me who still loved him. But she was gone. "Get out," I said. He hesitated. "You'll regret this, Emma." I smiled.
No.
"I regret ever loving you." He left. A week later, Lily reached out again.
She wanted to meet.
We met at a cafe, and she looked stronger, calmer. She said she'd told Daniel she was done for good. But then she told me something that made my heart stop. "Emma," she said, "I think he's been following you." "What?" "I saw his car near your street twice. And yesterday I got a call from a blocked number. It was his voice. He asked me if I'd talk to you again. When I said yes, he hung up." I felt my pulse quicken. I didn't want to believe he could go that far. But part of me wasn't surprised. Daniel hated losing control. And now he had lost everything. That night, I checked my windows, locked every door twice. I saw a car parked across the street, engine idling. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe not. Days turned into weeks, and I didn't see him again. But one morning, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photo of me and Lily at the cafe. Someone had written on it in red ink, "You think you've won?" I sat there, holding that photo, realizing that the story wasn't over. That even when you walk away from someone toxic, they sometimes don't walk away from you. And that's when I made my decision. If he wanted to play games, I'd play better. I started documenting everything: texts, calls, photos of his car when it appeared near my street. I wasn't going to be his victim anymore. I was going to make sure the world saw him for what he really was. But that part of the story, that's when things got really complicated. Would you like me to continue to the next part, where Emma's plan to expose Daniel begins to spiral out of control? I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the house, every whisper of wind outside made me flinch. I kept thinking about that photo. The red ink, the threat behind the words. You think you've won? It wasn't just anger. It was a warning. Daniel was trying to scare me, to remind me that he still had power. But he didn't know me anymore. I wasn't the quiet, trusting wife he could manipulate. I was someone who'd been broken and rebuilt from shards of betrayal, and now I was sharp enough to cut back. The next morning, I went to the police station. I told them about the harassment, the photo, the stalking. They listened politely, nodded, wrote things down, but I could tell they didn't take it seriously. There's not much we can do unless he directly threatens you, one officer said, his tone rehearsed, detached. Keep a record of everything. Call us if he shows up again. A record. That's what they wanted.
Fine.
I'd give them a record. I bought security cameras and installed them around my house, front porch, driveway, backyard. I changed my locks. I even told a few neighbors to keep an eye out for a dark blue BMW with tinted windows. Daniel's car. I thought that would be enough. But he was clever. He didn't show up again. Instead, he started to haunt me in quieter ways. Emails from fake accounts. Messages like "still thinking about you" or "we belong together, you know that." Always from different addresses. Sometimes I'd hear my phone buzz late at night, only to see a blank message, no sender, no text, just emptiness. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. Then Lily called me again. Her voice trembled. He showed up at my apartment. He said he just wanted to talk, but when I told him to leave, he punched the wall. Emma, I'm scared. I felt something shift inside me, fear turning into fury. He wasn't just tormenting me anymore. He was dragging someone else down, too. Don't worry, I told her. I'll take care of this. I didn't tell her what I was planning. I didn't even tell my sister, who'd been begging me to move away and start over. I needed to do this myself. I needed to end it. That weekend, I drove to the restaurant where Daniel used to meet clients, a sleek, overpriced place where everyone pretended their lives were perfect. I knew he'd be there,
He was predictable that way.
always clinging to the illusion of success. When I walked in, I saw him immediately, sitting by the window, laughing with two men in suits. He looked happy, like nothing had happened, like he hadn't destroyed 3 lives. I walked straight to his table. His smile froze when he saw me. Emma, he said, standing up. What are you doing here? I leaned in slightly, keeping my voice calm. You need to stop. Whatever game you think you're playing, it's over. His jaw tightened. You're making a scene?
Good, I said.
Maybe people should see who you really are. The men at the table exchanged awkward glances. One of them muttered something about giving us privacy and walked away. Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. You're still obsessed with me. That's your problem. You can't let go. I laughed, but it came out hollow. You think this is about love? No, Daniel. This is about consequences. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a hiss. You think anyone will believe you? You sound crazy. You're stalking me, harassing me. I could ruin you if I wanted to. And that's when I realized he wanted me to fight back. He wanted to push me until I broke so he could play the victim. I straightened up, smiled, and said, do whatever you need to, Daniel. I've already done mine. Then I turned and walked away. What he didn't know was that I had a plan already in motion. A week earlier, I had reached out to one of his business partners under the guise of a personal favor. I told him Daniel had been involved in questionable behavior, nothing too specific, just enough to spark curiosity. Then I sent an anonymous tip to his company's HR department, attaching screenshots of the harassing emails and a few love notes he'd sent me after the divorce. I blurred my name, but left as visible. It wasn't about revenge, it was about exposure. Within days, rumors started to spread. People whispered. His boss called him in for a discussion. And then, just like that, Daniel's perfect facade began to crack. He called me one night, furious. "You did this. You're destroying my life." "Welcome to mine," I said quietly and hung up. But what happened next, I didn't see coming. 2 weeks later, Lily showed up at my door again. But this time, she wasn't alone. She was holding a small box. "I found this in his apartment after he got suspended," she said, setting it on my table. "You should see it." Inside the box were photos, hundreds of them. Me at the grocery store. Me walking to my car. Me sitting on my porch. Some taken from across the street, others zoomed in through windows. My skin went cold. "He was watching you," Lily whispered. "For months." I felt sick. I wanted to scream, to tear the photos apart. But something stopped me. At the bottom of the box was a flash drive. I plugged it into my laptop, hands trembling. There were videos, grainy, time-stamped. My house. My bedroom. The footage was from my own security cameras.
He'd hacked into them.
That was it. The fear, the anger, the exhaustion, it all crystallized into one single, burning purpose. I called the police again, this time with evidence. Real, undeniable evidence. They came, they looked, and suddenly they were listening. An officer promised to file for a restraining order. They said they'd open an investigation into unlawful surveillance. For the first time, I felt like I might actually be safe. But safety is an illusion, isn't it? Because just when I started to breathe again, something unexpected happened. Daniel disappeared. No calls. No sightings. His car abandoned near the city outskirts. His phone disconnected. The police said they'd look into it, but part of me didn't believe them. Another part, an uglier part, didn't care. Maybe he'd finally realized he couldn't control me anymore. Maybe he'd run away. Or maybe karma had finally caught up. Weeks passed. I tried to move on. Therapy, yoga, dinners with friends. Slowly, I started to feel human again. Lily and I stayed in touch. Strange how shared pain can turn strangers into allies. We joked sometimes, darkly, about the Daniel Survival Club. But beneath the laughter, there was still a shadow. A quiet fear that he might come back. Then one evening I got a package. No return address. Inside was a single key and a note. "Thought you might need this. Foreclosure." No signature. No explanation.
Just that.
I stared at the key, heart pounding. It wasn't from my house. It was from his. I recognized the shape, the little silver notch. Curiosity battled with common sense, but in the end I went. I had to. His apartment was empty. The air smelled stale, untouched. Dust covered the furniture. But in his bedroom, I found something that stopped me cold. A letter, sitting on the nightstand, addressed to me. "Emma," it began. "You were right. About everything. I don't know how to stop destroying things I love. I thought hurting you would make me feel powerful again. It didn't. I see you in everything. I can't escape it. I never could." There was no apology, not really. Just confession. And at the bottom, a line that still echoes in my head. "I'm not gone. I'm just somewhere you'll never find me." I left the apartment shaking, the key still in my hand. The police said they'd keep the case open, but they never found him. Now, months later, sometimes I still catch the glimpse of a blue BMW in my rearview mirror. Sometimes I hear a phone buzz in the night and feel my pulse spike. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's him. But one thing I know for sure, I'm not afraid anymore. If he ever tries to come back, he won't find the same woman he left. Because now I know exactly what people are capable of when they think they've lost control. And maybe, just maybe, so does he. But tell me this, if you were me, and the man who betrayed and stalked you suddenly vanished without a trace, would you let it go? Or would you try to find out what really happened to him? I kept that key. I don't know why. Maybe as a reminder of how far I'd come, or maybe because part of me still needed to believe that story had an ending. For a long time, I didn't go near that apartment again. I told myself that if Daniel had vanished, that was the universe's way of closing the book. Then one evening, months later, I was sorting through old boxes, packing to move into a new place. A fresh start. And there it was again. The key, lying at the bottom of a drawer, gleaming faintly under the light. I held it in my hand, and before I even knew what I was doing, I was driving. Back to the old apartment. The building was quiet, almost abandoned. The air smelled of dust and old paint. When I reached his door, my hands trembled. The key slid in easily. The lock clicked open. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it, except for one thing. On the kitchen counter sat a single photograph, face down. My heart hammered as I turned it over. It was me, standing in my new garden, watering plants, smiling. The picture had been taken recently. On the back, written in the same neat, familiar handwriting, were just two words: still watching. I dropped the photo. My knees almost gave out. I ran outside, scanning the street, the windows, the shadows, nothing. No car. No sign of him. Just the wind. I went straight to the police again. They took the photo, promised to look into it. But I could see it in their eyes. They didn't think he'd come back. They thought maybe I planted it myself. Maybe I was imagining things. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat on the edge of my bed, staring at that same window where I'd once seen his reflection in the dark. The cameras still blinked quietly from the corners. My phone stayed silent. But the feeling, that crawling sense that someone somewhere was out there watching, never really left. So I moved. New city. New number. New everything. I changed my last name, started over completely. Lily and I still talk sometimes, though we never say his name anymore. It's like an unspoken rule. Don't wake what's sleeping. But sometimes, when I'm walking home late at night, I feel it. That tingle at the back of my neck. That whisper in the dark. And once, just once, I thought I saw him. Across the street. Same stance, same shape. He didn't move. Just watched. I blinked, and he was gone. Maybe it was him. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's just what happens when you've been haunted for so long. You start to see ghosts everywhere. I don't know if Daniel is alive. I don't know if he's still out there. But I do know one thing. No matter where he is, he'll never get inside my head again. Because this time, I'm not running. I'm ready. Still, sometimes I wonder, what if he never left? What if he's been closer than I think, watching, waiting, just to see if I'd ever look back? Tell me, if you were in my place after everything, would you live like he's gone? Or would you still keep looking over your shoulder?